Hello everybody and welcome back to Screen Stars. I'm here today to bring you another classic film review, and today's classic film review is for the 1993 Clint Eastwood action thriller In the Line of Fire, a film that's directed by Wolfgang Petersen, and it stars Clint Eastwood as Secret Service agent Frank Horrigan, John Malkovich, Rene Russo, Dylan McDermott, Gary Cole and John Mahoney. Now, this is one of my favourite Clint Eastwood films, and at some point a couple of years ago, I did a top 10 list of my favourite Clint Eastwood films, and this was definitely on that list. And this follows Clint Eastwood's character Frank Horrigan, who is an ageing Secret Service agent who was there when JFK was assassinated, and he didn't react at that time. And it's haunted him ever since, and he is on the trail of John Malkovich's character Mitch Leary, who essentially is threatening the president's life, and he's doing this through communicating with Clint Eastwood's character Frank Horrigan. It escalates and escalates, and it gets to the point where Clint Eastwood asks to be assigned to the president because he believes that he's going to make an attempt on his life, and he has to be there to put things right and put the demons of his past to bed. And that is essentially the main story of this film here. Now then, for those of you who have never seen In the Line of Fire, what are my thoughts on this film? Well, it's an absolutely fantastic film. I mean, at the time, Clint Eastwood was in his early 60s when I made this, maybe about 63, something like that. And he was red hot at the time. He'd done Unforgiven, which swept the board at the Oscars. He was the toast of Hollywood once again, and you could have his pick of pretty much any films. And this was a big hit. Certainly for the time in the early 90s for Clint Eastwood, and it was just an absolutely fantastic film with a fantastic cast, and it was one of the earlier films where, you know, Secret Service agents were portrayed as realistically as they could. They had on set a retired director of Secret Services, if you like, so he knew what Secret Service agents did, so he tried to make it as authentic as possible. Now, all that sounds great for authenticity, but this film would be nothing without this great chemistry and relationship between Clint Eastwood's character and John Malkovich's character. Two different ends of the scale. They're both, as you learn from watching the film, they were both trained by the government. Clint Eastwood was trained to protect, John Malkovich was trained to kill. They're complete opposites, but there is this connection between them in the film, and these conversations that they have on the phone with each other are very much so the highlight of the film, and they are great performances by both these actors. I mean, John Malkovich at the time was obviously known, but I would like to suggest that this was the film that pushed him through the glass ceiling in regards to acting gigs and what have you, because he's just outstanding in this film as this cold, icy killer with this mission and dedication to kill the president, and to do everything in his power to make sure he's able to do that, but to also balance this relationship with Frank Horrigan and these conversations that they have. It's the real highlights of the film. Wolfgang Petersen is a great director, and he can direct films like this with his eyes closed. He does a really good job with the action. It's a nicely paced film, and it's just a great film. And Wolfgang Petersen, you know, rarely makes poor films in my opinion, and he really handles this film well. And what I really like about this film and Clint Eastwood in this film is he kind of plays against type here. He plays in this film not the usual Clint Eastwood character, you know, the gruff hard man sort of thing. He plays a really charming character with a wonderful sense of humour, who is consistently flirting with Rene Russo's character in this film, and it's not the Clint Eastwood he used to seeing. He's very funny, he's got one-liners, and it's a real testament, I think, to Clint Eastwood taking on this role. That's something a little bit different for him. I mean, he handles the action side of it, this stuff, with his eyes closed. It's Clint Eastwood, for goodness sake. But I think this is arguably one of Clint Eastwood's greatest performances on screen, because it's not the Clint Eastwood you expect, and he plays something a little bit different in regards to the character he's playing, Frank Horrigan. And I really, really appreciate it. Every time I watch this film, it reminds me what a great performance this is by Clint Eastwood. He's surrounded by a great supporting cast here. Like I say, he's got John Malkovich, Rennie Russo, who was red hot in the 90s, was in so many great films. Dylan McDermott, who is great as Frank Horrigan, as Clint Eastwood's partner Frank Horrigan. They work really, really well together as this rookie agent who's learning from Clint Eastwood. Gary Cole and John Mahoney, obviously, who most people will recognise from the sitcom Frasier. He's very, very good in this as well. And there's some great effects in this film as well. I mean, it was the early days of CGI, and they managed to incorporate some pictures of Clint Eastwood as a younger man, and kind of intertwine them with like the assassination of JFK footage and things like that. It was quite clever effects for the time. And they experimented with this, and they did a lot of more experimentation in things like Forrest Gump. These days it's par for the course, but certainly in the early 90s it wasn't. So it was really nicely done, really nicely appreciated by me, and this is easily, I think, one of Clint Eastwood's best films, certainly from the 90s. And it's a really highly entertaining film with some great action, some nice set pieces, and some great performances, and it's one that I strongly suggest that you should check out if you're certainly a fan of Clint Eastwood, or is certainly a fan of action films in general. So I'm going to give it a very, very strong 9 out of 10. It's a wonderful film. It's really entertaining, great to watch, great actors, great characters, something a little bit different for Clint Eastwood, and it is one that I definitely suggest you check out. So that's my review for In the Line of Fire. Thank you very much for watching, and of course I'll see you back here for more reviews on Screen Stars very, very soon.